Welcome to the Memories of a Moonbird podcast, exploring life one story at a time. Hello, friends, and welcome to the Memories of a Moonbird podcast. I'm Daniel Sherrill. Today on the show, as a ranger in the United States Army, he saw some of the darkest sides of humanity through combat in Panama, Bosnia, and the Gulf. He's a recipient of the Purple Heart and a man who credits his service with allowing him to see the best in people and maintain a positive outlook on life despite everything he's seen and been through. Over his amazing career, he's not only been a senior VP, but today is a highly sought-after senior project manager who works exclusively with the technology divisions of Fortune 500 companies, a far cry from his roots growing up in South Central Los Angeles. Both his military and civilian lives have taken him around the world, and through those experiences, he's developed a love not only of travel, but of people and the human condition. Please welcome to the show my dear friend, former Staff Sergeant Edward Gaines.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here, sir.
I appreciate it. Thank you for having me.
So, Edward, what's it like being a kid from South Central?
That's a tough question. It's probably much like any other childhood. You grow up, you don't really know that you're poor or that you live in a restricted community. You just have friends and family and you go about your life, so you don't really understand that until you start to get older. So it's very much probably like most people.
And did you travel when you were a kid?
Yes. The best part about traveling as a kid was I used to go on weekend excursions. So maybe not distance travel, like, really far, but all of the local attractions up and down the West Coast and the Southwest of the United States.
What was one of your favorite attractions?
Oh, it's so funny you said that. I was just going to say, well, one of my favorite trips, let me hit that one first, was one time we went on a road trip. My family, we drove all the way across the country to Louisiana to see my grandmother's, a small town called Farmersville. But the best part of the trip was stopping at all the places across the United States on the road trip as a kid.
And how old were you then?
I think I was about 8 or 10. And then you asked me what was one of my favorite travel spots as a young kid. I really enjoyed going to Yellowstone and Yosemite, actually, both of those. Oh, wow, it's so hard because I also went to the Sequoias. And all
Now,
of
were
those
you
were
about
incredible.
the same age on all those trips?
I was about 9 on those trips. When I was 9 years old, my mom had a boyfriend. Every weekend, we literally would pile into a van and go somewhere. And it was camping basically every weekend. And so I saw all the national parks, the beaches, all of those things. It was great. The best part about it was I was also learning about a lot of those things in school at the time. And
Yeah, so you get to see them in real life.
it's incredible too because it's such a confidence builder because now in the class you become the hero who's actually been there, and so you can say what it's like, and I think anytime in your childhood when you have an opportunity to shine like that, it builds confidence. So
Agreed.
It helps you.
Agreed. So do you remember the very first place you went outside your home in South Central?
Hawaii was actually the first time I ever got on a plane or went on a trip, and it was around the same time. I don't remember a great deal about the trip except getting on a plane for the first time, and that was probably one of the most exciting parts. And then also in the hotel, they had lizards that ran around to catch the bugs,
Cool.
And that was the coolest thing to me. And then most of the time, I think as a kid, every place we traveled, in the KOA campgrounds or the hotels, the coolest thing for me was always the pool.
I grew up with KOA campgrounds. I love them.
Can I go to the pool? Can I go to the pool? And then, darting off down to the pool. And so it was so interesting how camping for me now is so different because now I don't want a pool. Now I want the lake. Now I want the beach. I don't even want a pool when I camp.
Do you feel like that age is when you discovered that you really like to travel?
I don't know if it was travel as much as new things and new experiences. And travel was a great avenue for that. So I enjoyed learning, so I enjoyed trying new things, and travel was just another way to open up huge horizons, of things and opportunities.
What do you like most about traveling, as who you are today?
My travels evolved quite a bit, and so I look at the journey of the travel, meaning that if you think about it, I'm 49 now, so I look back and I think of my whole life and all the travel I've done and how it's changed in the standards and quality of the things that I want, the types of places that I like to go to, so all that's been defined over the journey of traveling through the entire process. I think now I travel with all of that experience in mind and probably all the other stories and other things that influence it. And now what I look for is very comfortable, clean accommodations. Beyond destination, let me drop back because there's probably a filter here. I think I have a bucket list, right, of places I'd like to go now, and that's based on places I've been all over the world where I say I'd like to go to these places also, or I'd like to go back to these places and enjoy them differently.
What's at the top of your bucket list?
and this is going to sound really selfish, but the Maldives probably by myself for about 2 weeks.
Now, why is that?
I think it's the ultimate decompress. I think there's especially by yourself. It's probably a romantic destination for a lot of people, but the way that the villas are designed on the water, the scuba diving opportunities, the tranquility there, just the nothing environment of just beauty and just nothing but calm and peace is what is very appealing to me. I was just talking to my father yesterday as we were looking at a large spider web, and I was saying how I see God in a lot of things. And so when I see the perfect environment or I see the perfect landscape or the perfect view, that's God. I can sit there and look at that and see all the ecosystems and just really enjoy how complex that is and the beauty of every aspect and piece of it.
So now you mentioned God. You are a spiritual man.
I like to believe so, yes.
So did you grow up spiritual or religious?
Yes. I grew up Catholic and Baptist. And it sounds confusing, but I went to Catholic school. And so in order to go to Catholic school, you had to be baptized Catholic. My mom is actually Catholic. But my grandmother, who I spent a great deal of time with, was Baptist. And so on Sundays, I went to Baptist church. So I grew up with both of those religions, probably from as early as I can remember until probably early high school. And then I started.
Are you talking Southern Baptist with the choirs and the singing and everyone standing up?
Yeah, of course. Awesome. You know, the type where you go to church at 7 a.m. and don't leave till 3:30, that type of stuff. And I spent a lot of time with my grandmother, so we also did a lot of the things that you do as an elder in the church.
How do you think having such a strong religious background did that in any way affect your traveling?
It influences in the things that you want to explore or see. Meaning that if there are religious relics that in some kind of way either, just from a history perspective too, I guess they kind of convolute or crash together there. I think from that perspective, what's interesting? Let me say this. I used to go on vacation. I remember one year I was going on vacation, me and my wife at the time, and we were saying to our pastors at the church that we were going on vacation. So the pastor said, oh, well, what church you gonna go visit while you're down there? And I went like, I'm not, right? And it never dawned on me that while I was on vacation, I could be visiting another church. So it almost ties into the question you just asked me. Now, when I travel to places, I tend to like to go to church. And so you say, how is my spirituality tied into travel? Now, so if I go to Bali and I'm there over the weekend, I'm going to go absorb some form of their spirituality. And it may not be Christianity. It may not be any type of thing like that. It might not be a church service. It may be me visiting a temple.
Religion with a historic temple or something.
But I want to understand and I appreciate. I want to. It's your religious upbringing gives you a different level of respect and insight for someone else's culture and how important religion can be in their culture. And it helped me in the military a great deal.
So you mentioned your military career. How much was travel a part of that? Obviously, you went all over the world.
Well, travel is intricate, and I was a ranger, so we traveled everywhere. We trained everywhere. So I trained in all elements, all environments. So I traveled all over the United States, and then we would travel among, in other parts of the world to train with other organizations or other militaries to hone your skills in different environments. From that aspect, there was a lot of travel. Now, my ability to be able to see and enjoy the culture or the surroundings sometimes could be limited based on location and what we were doing. But there's always a percentage of culture that you either observe or learn, meaning that going into a country for anything, you need to understand some of the aspects of the culture that are just your ability to be able to communicate with them, to respect.
Well, and how are you trained on that? Are you pulled aside and given like a morning briefing or some kind of thing where you're educated about these different ways of life?
Exactly. Typically, it comes in several ways. It can either come from a debrief, it can come from a piece of paper, it can come from video, but typically it's someone has already identified what the cultural importances are, the levels of respect. An example might be right and left hand. If you eat with a certain hand in certain cultures because you wipe your butt with your other hand. And so to reach for something or to shake someone's hand with the wrong hand would be
very offensive.
Exactly. Or the bows in Asia, the difference in the bows in Asia, that type of thing. So, and then simple things too, like also gender in some cultures, you can't speak to the women or look at the women, those types of things. And especially that's important. I know like in the, when I was in the Gulf region, when we come into villages leadership was important there, and hierarchy was extremely important. So you had to know cultural intricacies.
Where was the most challenging environment geographically that you've been to?
Fort Drum, New York, for cold weather training was the worst place I've ever been. I hated it. It was freezing, and I'm not. I appreciate the cold, but
Now, see, I'm from the cold. I love it.
I appreciate it. I like to go there and visit, but I want to go home to where it's warm. And at Fort Drum, it's freezing. It's in upstate New York, and you go. It's the mountain division, and you go there just to learn cold weather training or mountaineering. It's just freezing. The exercises that you do are in the cold because that's
Give me
what
an
it is.
example of one of the difficult exercises.
Like the snow crawl. It's an exercise where you crawl across snow, basically simulating like if you were slow approaching a target, or if you were a sniper supporting, for us and what we were doing.
And how deep is the snow?
Oh geez, I don't even remember, but it was hard and soft, meaning that it was so much snow that the bottom part is hard, but the top part is sort of soft. Okay.
And are you covered by the snow, or are you?
We're crawling on it. So is depending on how fast you're crawling, it indicates the amount of snowfall that's on you. Depending on how fast you're moving, that indicates how fucking cold you are. Excuse me. So but the sucky part about that exercise is you have to move all your muscles without moving. So I'm wiggling my toes right now in my boots all the time. Like right now I'm wiggling my toes just to simulate. I'm blinking my eyes. I'm twitching my face even though I'm trying not to move my head. Just those types of things. And you're constantly trying to, because you're trying to keep your body warm because you're laying on snow.
So you mentioned this crazy difficult training in the military in the winter and whatnot. What, as a civilian, what has been the most difficult part of traveling for you?
Oh wow. It's okay. I'm going to go back to my travel evolution story and go back to the service. In my lifetime, a lot of times I relate difficult challenges to times when things were more difficult for me. So as a civilian traveling, I can never think of an opportunity where it was really worse than traveling in the military. And the only thing that even comes close to that is like being stuck in an airport or going to a hotel that after I checked into the hotel, I didn't like the accommodations and having to switch hotels. That's happened to me on a few occasions. Mm-hmm. I'm not as flexible of a traveler as I used to be. And what I mean is when I was in
I think that's a natural evolution as you get older.
Because when I was in the service, I would sleep, me and my friends, I'd sleep on the floor at someone's house. You know what I mean? On the weekend, we're in the Army. We all come over. 6 of us crashed your pad because we had a weekend pass and we're in, Berlin or something. And so someone had a friend or a cousin or somebody and we all slept at their house. Now I don't do that. Now I kind of like, if I go to your city, I kind of want my own car. I want to rent a car. I want to stay in my own hotel. It's something about me now where I want to be able to leave when I want to. I don't know, man. I have no idea where that comes from. But somehow that monster has come up on me.
Well, I don't think it's a monster. I really do believe it's a natural evolution of the human life. You spend your youth doing all the crazy stuff and backpacking places and putting up with a lot of stuff you don't realize is uncomfortable. But then you discover how comfortable a nice hotel can be, or having the luxury of your own time schedule. And I think there's nothing wrong with wanting that.
Yeah, but okay. So, but I actually think it's something wrong with me though, because see, I admire that about you. You're such an exciting traveler in the sense that you can do that.
Well, wait, in all fairness, before you give me too much credit, when I go to visit my mother, I still get an Airbnb and rent a car.
Okay. So it's never mind. Maybe we're actually the same then. It just matters who and where. But I still admire. Yeah, I think you travel very adventurously, much more than I do now. You actually have inspired me to travel differently, a little bit more adventurous, a little bit. So like I just found out that it's incredibly inexpensive for a room in Bali. And all you have to do is basically cover your airfare there. So hope that's one of the places you go to.
Me too. I've never been there, actually. So where's one of your favorite places you've traveled in your life and why?
It's going to sound boring to some people probably, but I really like New Orleans. I think I feel connected there. And I think that's why I like it so much. I love good food, and the food is better than any place I've ever been in the world. The food there is just incredible because of the infusion of all the cultures. So you have French, you have Spanish, you have Cajun, you have American, you have Native American, Indian. I mean, now you even have the Asian flavors and also a lot of Latino flavors now because it's mixed in so much since the hurricanes.
Well, and also I think you have a culture there in New Orleans that is... It's so artistic and creative and passionate, and people who have been through so much difficulty, and they're survivors. And I think it shows in their cuisine. They're just
I agree.
No holds barred.
New Orleans is one of the oldest cities. That's why it has actually one of the oldest pubs in the country. So it's called the Blacksmithers Pub or something along those lines, and I think it's one of the oldest operating pubs in America. And the coolest part about it was when I was in there, still has the straw floor. They've never replaced the floor.
Oh, wow.
That means that I was standing on the same floor as Andrew Jackson, Blackbeard, all those incredible people that have ever come through there and made anything from themselves. I mean, think about the people that travel through New Orleans. It's incredible. And then one more thing. I love that there's so many kids, and just people, but a lot of children that are always playing musical instruments. And they have such huge musical programs. I believe that music is so important to my culture as African American, to storytelling. And New Orleans is so deeply rooted in that. And there's actually, if you go to Congo Square in the park at Armstrong Park, I think it is, that's where the slaves used to be able to meet on Sundays, and they would sing and dance, and they were basically telling stories to each other and passing on information.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, speaking of New Orleans culture, actually, when we were there, we took a tour out to the bayou, and we got to do one of those boat tours on this, the old wooden boat with the big fan on the back and everything. And it was so cool because we actually got to pilot the boat, and we got to feed alligators, and it was really awesome. We saw these little, what are they called, the nutria?
Yes.
I know they're kind of an annoying species.
Very, very annoying species.
But they're super adorable, and they're really fun to watch.
Oh, so that's what you thought when you saw them?
Yeah, I think they're cool, man. They dive into the water and stuff. It's great.
They are kind of cute. Cute. It's so interesting how everyone has an alligator story, though, when they go to New Orleans.
Yeah.
Because of those tours. Because when you're walking around New Orleans, all those tours, the alligator tour, the swamp tour, the Cajun whatever tour, and that's the first time I ever fed alligator.
Yeah.
I didn't know that they gave them marshmallows until I went on the tour.
The alligators?
Yeah, they throw marshmallows in the water. And one of the coolest things about that is, as the marshmallows are floating in the water, the raccoons run over off the tree branches and reach down and try to grab the marshmallows. So there's this huge game going on between the raccoons trying to get the marshmallows before the alligators get them. And so there was a couple times where you see the raccoon reach down and the alligator come up and whop, right? Just barely missed the raccoon.
Wait, I got to tell you, on our boat tour, they didn't feed them marshmallows. They gave them raw chicken.
Okay, so yes, I fed them chicken too, and they did feed them chicken, but initially to attract them. So the first part of our tour wasn't the fan boat. It was sort of on the flat bottom,
airboat,
the big flat bottom boat where there are a lot of people on it, okay?
Right.
And so it's kind of going around. There are multiple boats, like as you're going around, because as we were on the tour, we see another boat, and it's like, oh, hey, wave to the other
same
boat.
with us, yeah.
All right.
We actually raced the other boat,
Classic. So isn't it funny how all the destinations you go to when they have like boat tours, there's always like that thing going on.
Yeah,
the
rivalry.
Yeah.
It's funny.
It's so they're throwing these marshmallows out, and I didn't know what they were doing, but that's when this whole thing happened, and you saw this whole interaction go on, okay? So now we're going around. The guy says, okay, who wants to feed one? This is after he's reached in the water, touched one or two, and all that stuff. So we're on this boat, and he says, okay, who wants to get out and feed one? And so kind of no one's saying anything, and so I was like, okay, heck, I'll do it. I'll feed one. So I'm thinking like he's going to give me some chicken. I'm going to toss it from the edge of the boat or whatever.
That's how you lost your hand?
Seriously, a story should sit in that way, but it doesn't. Actually, so he pulls up to land. So then I'm going like, what's he doing, And he jumps out the boat. Come on. So I'm like, oh, whoa, we're getting out on land with him? I mean, it was much safer in the boat. He's like, oh, come on. So we get out, and we walk a little distance from the boat, so like I guess kind of away to another ridge area so, they could kind of come up to us. So he starts off like, he throws out a couple marshmallows, and then he starts, tossed out like one or two pieces of chicken. And so now it's like 3 or 4 alligators start coming in our direction, right? And actually, there's a couple raccoons coming over the top too, right? All of a sudden, I'm like, okay, cool. He says, so what we're going to do, he starts explaining to me. He says, all you have to do is you hold the chicken up in the air, and when he comes up and he opens his mouth, you just drop it. So I'm like, oh, okay, whoa, this is kind of, okay, whoa. And I'm thinking, well, can he reach me? And he's like, so he says, I'll do one, then you do another one. So I say, okay. So he has piece of chicken in his hand. I have piece of chicken. We're kind of standing side by side, So all of a sudden, he's like, oh, shit. And I'm like, oh, shit. That's the last thing I fucking want to hear in this moment, I'm like, so I say, what? And he goes, I didn't realize you had that big white T-shirt on. And I'm like, what the hell does that have to do with it? He said, it looks like a marshmallow. And then he says, I'm just fucking with you. I almost pissed my pants, man, at that point, because I'm like, alligators come up to me. It's the oh shit moment. But basically, I end up, alligator comes up, opens the mouth. I drop the chicken. You know, they got a great shot of it. I got a great shot of me feeding an alligator, man. It's so cool.
So speaking of all these cool adventures, when you go to a place you've actually never been, how do you personally get acquainted with a new place? And what I mean is, like, most people have a tradition. You know, some people go out for a meal. Some people, you know, I like to find a bookstore or a museum. Jolene loves to go for a run. What's your thing?
I talk to people. When I'm checking in, I talk to the people that work there. I'm kind of the people kind of a person. I typically relate to them and I talk to them. You know, the bellman, the valet, you know, the housekeeper down the, you know, as I'm walking down the thing, you know, concierge, all them. They typically have a vibe and they know what, you know, you can ask them more deeper, penetrating questions, and they're not necessarily trying to sell you something sometimes. You know what I mean? So it just depends on how you approach them. Then I fall back to all those things that you just said. You know, and typically every place I've gone to, I've done some research before I get there.
Yeah, me too. I talk about a lot. It's in my travel tips that one of the
you
most
got to do
important
research.
things. Yeah,
it's
you gotta
important.
research.
Well, in the military, we say, failing to plan is planning to fail.
What's something you don't like about traveling?
Airports.
Now, why? What specifically about airports? Besides the sheer amount of viruses just flying around.
I was gonna say that's probably the thing I don't like the most is I think you're in an incubator of all kind of nastiness and disease. But then on top of that, there tends to be a lot of. I always look at travel as such a great thing. You know, travel to me is like fun, exciting, pleasure. Even when I travel for work, you know, and I've traveled for work quite a bit. So when I'm in the airport, a lot of times people seem frustrated, angry, you know, tense, you know, those types of things, you know, just impatient. And the people that work there a lot of times don't actually seem like they like their job.
Well, and I think it's actually changed quite a bit because when we were kids and we're the same age, you used to be able to go through security with your loved one and you would go to the gate and you'd wait with them. And then when they arrived, you'd be there and you could bring flowers and signs and stuff. And now everything is so restricted and so secure. I think it creates a more tense environment, unfortunately. But, you know, hey, a safer one. So.
Well, I agree with that. But you know what? Like, I think my suggestion to everybody would be to get pre-TSA or get global TSA or clear. So now you can avoid some of those things.
Well, I tell people to do that if they're going to be a frequent traveler. If they're only going once a year, it doesn't matter.
Do it.
Don't
It's not worth
money,
it. Yeah. I think for me, I've realized that travel is so easy. That's the other thing.
When you say travel's easy, what do you mean?
Okay, so growing up, maybe they say maybe cultural. I don't know if it's cultural or financial, but there used to be this stigma that travel was like expensive. Mm-hmm. You know, or like
still is to this day. People still think that.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Exactly. It's like, oh wow, you went to San Diego. Oh wow, you went to Las Vegas, and then if you really were to price out the trip, the flight, and everything. It's not expensive. You spent that same amount of money going nowhere this weekend, and I just happened to go somewhere and do something, you know. So they just don't understand or know.
We went to New Zealand for 2 weeks for our 10-year anniversary. We planned the trip 6 months to a year in advance. We bought all of our excursions ahead of time. We used our credit card rewards to get free plane tickets. So for two of us to go to us for Sydney for a week and then to New Zealand for a week and all the crazy adventures we did, helicopter to a glacier, all that stuff, right? The whole trip, including car rental, Airbnb, and food for two people was $3,000.
Yeah. See, that's
$1,500 a person. And we had 2 weeks in Oceania.
And then who would not want to do that?
Yeah.
Who would not want an adventure of a lifetime? That is priceless. And that's what people don't realize is life is about the journey. And when you're looking back, you don't want regret. And I grew up in South Central, and I knew guys that had never gone to the beach. And that to me was just mind-boggling because there's so many things that occurred in my childhood growing up that made me say I'm going to ensure the exact opposite. So because I would watch something like that or I understood something like that, I said, forget that. I'm going everywhere. I'm going any place I can, and I'm doing as much as I can. Plus, I also felt blessed because I did go to the beach, because as a kid, I did all of that traveling.
Has the majority of your travel in your life been with other people or by yourself?
It's probably always been with other people. That's an evolution too. I will say that it started in groups as a family, and then it evolved into by myself, and then it went into groups again, and then it evolved into family again. Now it's just started to become singular again.
Have you been able to take a father-son trip with EJ, your son? For those who don't know, your son.
Yeah. We've gone to Chicago. We've gone to Detroit. And we've gone to New Orleans. Yeah,
That's
and I
great.
mean a lot of local trips like Vegas, San Diego, stuff like that. But as far as like major trips, those are the only real major trips. I haven't taken them overseas yet, but that's a plan too. I want to go to Africa.
When I moved to Los Angeles I was living in Boston at the time, I actually drove to Ohio, picked up my dad in the car, and he and I drove across the country together. And it's still one of my favorite trips I've ever taken because
Oh
you're
yeah,
with your dad and you're with your parent, and
yeah,
you're going across the United States of America. And we took like 6 days. It's a 2.5 day
yep.
trip, really. But we took like 6 days, stayed with friends, saw a bunch of sights, went up in the St. Louis Arch together, like did all that stuff. And it was
How crazy is that?
Oh, I won't ever do it again because the rocking back
Yes.
and forth thing. No, thank you. You and I are both gear people. So, do you have a favorite piece of equipment or travel toy that you would like to take with you?
That's so challenging because now TSA takes damn near everything. So, it's so hard to take something with you when you travel.
No, I'm talking about like an iPad or a Bluetooth headphone. Or
Yeah, no,
something
I was
cool,
gonna get to that. I was like, well, your handy dandy computer in your hand, your
I'm
phone.
not talking about strapping up with a bunch of guns. Okay, come on.
I was thinking of the first thing when you said that, what crossed my mind originally wasn't that. It was surfboards and scuba gear.
Oh, okay, good.
That was
good.
really the first thing that crossed my mind. A lot of guys like to take their surfboards with them where they go surf. I've been surfing for a while, but I would say I'm probably not that advanced where I want to take I'll just rent the surfboard that's there, where I go. And the scuba gear, I'm the same way. I love scuba, but I don't ship my gear with me when I go scuba diving unless it's a boat trip and we go off.
Where's the coolest place you've ever been scuba diving?
Cozumel, probably.
And you base that upon the clarity of the water and the amount of marine life, or what's your?
The giant stingrays. That was probably really what made it cool. I mean, the water was clear, it was warm, it was great. Everything was perfect, But and I said Cozumel, I meant Cabo. Excuse me. Okay, so do you know the story about that?
No.
Oh, okay. So those are I want to say the Mexican fishermen because it's actually Cabo. So the Mexican fishermen, they would go out and catch the fish, and they come back into these little like us port areas or coves, and they would clean and cut fish there. So as they were processing the fish, you're cutting off the heads and all that stuff. They drop it over sides. Well, giant stingrays, another fish, would come there, and over time would eat. And so then divers started getting in the water with them, So this has been happening 40, 60 years. I don't even know how long, to be honest with you. But it's a tourist thing you can do when you go down there if you're a scuba
Cool.
diver.
So, of all the places you've been around the world, is there a place that you haven't been besides the Maldives? Like well, you said that's on your bucket list, but do you have a list of destinations of places you really want to go?
Oh, yeah. I haven't been to Morocco. I want to go there. I haven't been to Italy. I want to go there. Greece, Spain. Some countries that were on my list. But honestly, because of the
Political
social
situation.
and political environments, they've come down. I've always wanted to go to India, and the reason why I've wanted to go to India and even China is because I think from an herbal medicine perspective, from a food perspective,
Well, a history perspective. I mean.
history, just all these different things. They're so rich, and I would think it's so beautiful, but the environment seems so unsafe. And when I say unsafe, it doesn't necessarily mean I'm not talking necessarily terrorists. It could be crime. It could also be medically. Like China, I don't want to go to China because of the air. To be honest with you, the air is horrible in China. I mean, so do you really want to go? It's like going to go walk into a parking garage, and you know what I mean. And let me stay here for 2 weeks, and just so I can see some sights that I can look at on Google. I'd rather go down to the Philippines or go down to Thailand or someplace where they're not going to have that kind of pollution. It's not going to be there, and I can still experience some of that Asian culture. Polynesian islands. I love the Caribbean. I mean, so there are a lot of places. Like I said, the only places I have no real interest going, Alaska, the Arctic. I wouldn't mind going to Scotland though, and for golf.
Well, then don't go during the winter.
Yeah, definitely not.
So you're saying Scandinavia is not on your list?
No, not at all. Not high on the list. It's on the list. It's just a little lower down the bucket list.
But Scandinavian summer, not winter, obviously.
Clearly.
Outside of the military, because obviously there's some stuff built in there, but have you had to overcome particular challenges while traveling?
Like food poisoning? I mean, what kind of challenges are you talking about? I mean, like I got sick one time because I ate oysters and drank the wrong alcohol. That felt like, oh God. But no, I mean, like usually, like I said, I'm pretty laid back while traveling. The worst thing that's ever happened to me is my process when I check into a hotel. I pull up in my car, I'll valet or I'll park right there in the entry. And then I usually go into the hotel, get my room, and all that. And then I go up and check out the room first. And that's just because I want to make sure the room's been cleaned. I want to make sure that everything is in order.
Well, you're
before
just saying quality assurance, essentially.
Yeah, and I want all that before I carry my bags upstairs and do all that other stuff. And only because, like I said, my travel experience has meant I've been to some countries and some places where you check in, and it looked really great on the internet, and you thought it was going to be incredible. You know what I mean? And you get there and you start saying, well, "Wait a minute, ooh no, oh no."
Well, no, but don't you think there's an element of your military training that feeds into all of this? Because
Yeah, I don't do stupid things. I take precautions. I look at things. I assess situations. I don't do risky things. You know, I don't. When I go into countries, I stay in the tourist areas. I don't go outside. I mean, again, when I'm in the United States, I get a rent a car. I drive all around the city. I don't care. I look at houses. I go all over the place, right? Because a ghetto's a ghetto. I grew up in a ghetto. I got no fear of that. When I go to other countries, it's different. I don't get in the car and drive around their ghettos and that kind of thing. No, I stay. I go to the restaurants. I go to the beach things. I go to the tourist destinations, the museums, those things. But the things that they want to show me and share with me, the safe things. I don't venture off into the unsafe things.
do you have a favorite food?
A specific dish or a specific type of food? Are you saying?
A specific dish or a specific, like, burger or pizza or whatever.
No.
Something you just I couldn't live without this food.
No, I don't have a food I couldn't live without, but I have a whole lot of food I like. I mean, I like food. I like to cook myself, and so I like food. So there's a lot of food I like, and I love different cultures. That's the best part of traveling to me is tasting the food and enjoying the food.
Oh, yeah.
Food and music are like the foundational pieces of culture. So it's like, I mean, that's where you get to know people. That's where you laugh and joke and taste and fire and all that stuff's going on, whether it's in the music, the song, the dance, the food,
Well, because
the
some of these
taste.
cuisines and recipes go back hundreds of years or thousands of years. They're traditions that have been handed down over and over again. And
it's love.
Yeah,
It's love. And you feel the love when you eat it. I think that's why I want to go back to my New Orleans. You feel that love, that suffering. You feel that. You feel that pain. You feel that love through the pain. When you go to places where culture suffered a great deal, their food is usually better, to be honest with you. And it's because I think they've had to do more with less and be so creative about different things. And I think
that's a fascinating thing to think about.
Yeah, and when you go to places where it's been excess and you think that's where they would have it all and all that. No, I don't want to talk about French food, but it's bland to me.
Well, we'll disagree on that, but maybe you just ate the wrong French restaurants. Do you have something that is you take with you whenever you travel, an item that you just don't ever like to travel without? Could be a good luck charm, could be a security blanket, but something that you like to have with you.
I would say for everybody at this point, the most valuable tool that you probably could have with you.
No, this is for you specifically.
Me. And so everybody else is your damn phone now at this point. It's supplanted everything else. Your phone has everything that you could possibly need. I mean, short of a machete or a bit of light fire. I mean, outside of that.
The eye knife?
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? I mean, outside of something like that, your phone is the thing that is the key to knowledge, to understanding, to help, to so many different things. So I think that your phone is probably the most important
So while
item.
other people might bring the blanket that they were wrapped up in when they were born, you're going to bring your
cell
Android.
phone. Yes, yes, whatever it is. Yeah, really, what's more important than your cell phone and your smarts?
You're sitting down at a bar with some person that you've always wanted to talk to in history. It doesn't matter who it is, right?
Okay.
Anybody.
Yeah.
And the bartender comes over and says, "What would you like to drink? What is your, I want to remember this moment the rest of my life. What is your drink of choice?"
When you put it in that frame, I'm going to say water because I want to be clear-headed to remember it. But my fantasy in that particular aspect would be to be sitting with Malcolm X or Obama and we're drinking a Gentleman's Jack and Coke or something like that.
So Jack and Coke, that's your...
Well, Gentleman's Jack, it's like the double barrel, the more expensive version, smoother taste. And I could see me sitting back with a cigar, talking to one of them, picking their brains, just really sharing all of our experience, giving out pounds, having a good time. Talking.
Well, if former President Obama ever comes on my podcast,
I want to be right here.
I'll bring you here.
Yeah, I'm going to be here. Hell or high water.
Do you have an opinion on or an idea of ways in which we, just as citizens of the earth, can travel better? Because that's actually my slogan is travel better. And for me, that means a lot of different things. But when it comes to the environment, what's something or some things that you think would be better for the world?
Well, there's a few things. First thing I think is, let's start at the core. I think everything else that we're going to say after this is really treating symptoms. The issue is that as a global community, we need to think that way. And so first we should be humanitarians, then we should be environmentalists, then we should be everything else. But every person on the planet should be that way first. And if everyone could have that focus, then we would not have environmental issues. We would be conscious about those things. Because people wouldn't want airplanes and ships that still pollute and do the things that they do. The issue here is how can you travel consciously as an environmentalist or someone that cares about the community and travel on an airplane or in a cruise ship or any of those things? Well, you can. What you can do is you can look for cruise ships that are environmentally conscious, that have met the new regulations, and you travel with them and you make that a priority. You can go to hotels that rewash and recycle and redo things like that make that a priority. The issue is just, it's like everything else. It's like your life. It's like people ask the question, why don't I work out? Why don't I work out? It's because it's not a priority. So if you made the environment in travel a priority, so if it wasn't just, I'm looking for luxury accommodations, if it was, I'm looking for luxury accommodations in an environmentally conscious place, and that was a requirement for you, then what that does is money, demand. That's what dictates things in
Absolutely.
America.
If everybody in the world said, I'm not going to stay at a place that doesn't recycle and have solar power and do whatever, suddenly within a very short amount of time.
I'm not getting in your cab. Look at all of that exhaust.
For sure. And it's a dialogue that I just hope we continue to have as a species so we can have a planet for the future. In your experience, why do you think people are afraid to leave the nest or leave the safety of their hometown and travel and see the world? What holds people back?
I think comfort. I think that people are just, it's more like repetitive behaviors are comfortable to you. And I think, honestly, I think people don't even realize this, that sort of subconsciously they become comfortable. Your brain automatically, I believe, trains itself to take things that you do in a normal environment and try to make them regular so it doesn't have to waste processing power on those things. And so I believe in life that happens a lot with people. So if I'm used to my environment and I'm used to my routes and I'm used to the places I go, I know what to expect, and I get caught in that zone. And by getting caught in that zone, I just don't mean your comfort zone like you're feeling. Your finances get tied to it too. And so you don't see that, like, if I gave up on this, or if I saved this, or if I forego that, or if I just put a little bit, I could go do these things, or they're available to me. You never go outside of your box. It's kind of like you would think that people that got a cell phone, you would think the kids today would be smarter than kids ever were ever in life.
They have the entire internet, the whole world, the history of humanity in the palm of their hand.
Every lesson that they're going to experience in their educational process is in their hand right now. Mm-hmm. Right now. So if I'm in the 5th grade, I could be looking at 10th grade stuff. But what are they doing? They're looking at the things that are comfortable for them in their environment, that are safe, that they're conditioned to look at, that they want to look at, and so on and so forth. And so,
in all fairness, Angry Birds is a fun game.
It is. It really is, actually. I'm not saying they don't have cool stuff, but I'm just saying technology, sometimes we're not using it to its capabilities or what it was originally conceptually designed for. And so I think it can be, just as much as it could be so expansive, it could be limiting also.
Which part?
The part that keeps you in that box, the part that keeps you only in your environment.
It's fear-based at the end of the day, in my opinion. I think people are afraid of change. They're afraid of leaving the comforts that you speak of. And if they go out of their comfort zone, they have to go into the unknown a little bit. And I think that scares a lot of people.
Yeah, but I guess what I'm saying is that things are less unknown to you when you can dabble in them. And what I mean is, so like with the internet in your hand, you can experience everything. Like YouTube, with all the technology out there, meaning I could look up a river in another country and probably eventually find someone that filmed themselves going down that river, right? And so what I'm saying, and the reason why I'm saying that is, so you said that it's not, I used to think it was a lack of exposure. So going back to the story I told you earlier about the guys that lived in my neighborhood that never been to the beach, I thought that was lack of exposure, right? Like they just didn't know that the beach was 20 miles down. They didn't understand that, or 10 miles down this street. But I don't know what keeps you confined like that. I have no idea.
Specifically with reference to traveling, do you, as an experienced traveler yourself, do you have any advice to people in the world? What would you tell them?
Go. If the seed gets planted, go. And I don't care what it takes. And what I mean by that is there's so many times in my life where I've traveled a lot, but there's been plenty of times I could have gone more places that I just didn't go because of some restriction that I thought of that felt like a real restriction, but then come to find out it really wasn't a real restriction, because just like anything else, if you want it, you go get it. So I say, if you have any opportunity to travel, travel. If you have a job that says, come live over here and travel, come do this and travel. If you have a friend that says, come stay at my house and experience this for 2 weeks, if all those things, do them. And more travel begets more travel.
I am excited to premiere a new feature here on the Memories of a Moonbird podcast, and it's called 299 Philosophical and Life Questions with Moonbird. It is very much exactly what it sounds like. Through friends and family and the internet, I have compiled a list of 299 philosophical and life questions. Some are serious, some are not at all, some are poignant, and I'm going to ask every guest during the podcast to pick their two numbers from 1 to 299, and I'll ask them those questions right then and there. So, with no further ado, my friend, former Staff Sergeant Edward Gaines, what are your two numbers?
7 and 22.
7 and 22. That was very quick to decide. I like that. Number 7. What are you not good at?
Wow. Well, I think I can improve in everything. When I look at what I'm not good at, I think I wouldn't say that I'm not good at most things I do. I know this sounds conceited, Daniel, because most things that I do, I think I do above average. So, but something I'm not good at, I talk too much, so I ramble.
Fair enough, and I always appreciate an honest answer. Number 22. What's one of your favorite books or movies of all time, and why did it speak to you so much?
It's actually the book of Matthew in the Bible in the New Testament. When I was young, my grandmother told me that I could read this book and it would tell me everything I needed to do or be, or how to live and go through life. So I read it and then kind of forgot about it. And then when I became older and started managing people, I was listening to a sermon, and someone told me in the sermon, the pastor said that it was called the Book of Management. And at the time, I was new to my management career and started my career in corporate America. So I reread the book again, and it's very true. It does talk about the way in which you should live your life and the way in which you should treat and respect people. And in those philosophies and in those ways, if you followed that book and that concept, you would be successful. And I tried to do that in my career and in my life.
What do you think the meaning of life is?
Still working on that one, but I think it's the journey. I don't think that there's an end result or a meaning. I don't think that you're going to come to some concept at the end where it's aha moment. I don't think that's what it is. I think what you do is you come to an appreciation of the journey and all the wealth of all the experiences that you've gone through. And the problem is, and that's why travel is so intricate to that, because travel is typically very happy, pleasant experiences.
Mm-hmm.
And
most of the time.
Yeah, and life should be about tying those happy experiences together. And that's your journey, so it's all how you reflect on it.
I want to thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
And have yourself a great day.
I am. I'm going to go eat some good food. I should get on a plane and go to New Orleans.
If you'd like some more Moonbird in your life, and hey, who wouldn't? Head on over to memoriesofamoonbird.com or visit me on social media @memoriesofamoonbird.